Hello. Day 32. Let's wait for a few more to join. Okay, good evening. So, good evening. I hope everyone is safe, sound, and healthy. So, prior to starting my class, may I give you a brief introduction about myself? Hello, I'm Shalini. I am a BTech and MTech holder in computer science and engineering. I'm a teacher by profession with over 14 years of teaching experience. With Unacademy, I'm excited to provide an inspiring learning experience to all the students via this online platform, whom I could not have reached otherwise through my classroom or offline teaching. So, before going into our lessons, let me give you a brief introduction or a revision tour to what an academy is and its various subscription details. So, Unacademy is not anything that is unfamiliar to anyone today because it is a very happening app nowadays and it is India's largest learning platform. Now, what you will get in Unacademy, you get daily live classes wherein you can chat with the educator, engage in discussions, and then answer using polls while the class is going on. All the courses in an academy are well structured and from educators well prepared. There are live tests and quizzes which will help you in the analysis of your performance. So this is in a nutshell the comprehensive syllabus for any CBSE plus 2 student, and these are the various courses under each of the stream that is being offered in an academy. Now, this is how the Unacademy app, learning app would look like. You can install in your smartphones and get subscription. And while getting the subscription, you can get into any of the courses that is offered by Unacademy. So there is a Telegram app too. What you just need to do is download your Telegram app in your smartphones and then type this particular link in the URL as specified in the diagram and then click to join. Now, the most important part, the subscription fee details. Now, this is the subscription fee details for the CBSE Class 12 students. Here, there is a range of subscription details shown here, ranging from 1 month subscription to an year subscription, and the fees are also being shown here. Now, if you avail my code SLYT, I repeat, my promo code SLYT, you can get a fee wavering of about 10% in the subscription amount. You can take a trial for 1 month and then proceed on to an year's subscription. So, hello, good evening. I hope I'm audible to everybody. So I'll be dealing with you CBSE Class 12 Computer Science subject, and according to the NCRT syllabus for the Class 12 Computer Science, you have to learn Python language. We had a session and in the previous class we learned the introduction to Python ranging from the character set to the selection control flow statements. And today we'll be dealing with the continuation of the last class portion. The topic that we'll be dealing today is more on conditional statements. Now, though we had seen an introduction to the various conditional statements and then looping statements in detail. Okay. So these are the contents that we'll be covering in today's presentation. We'll be looking into the nested if statements. We had seen the if conditional statement, which was used for selective control flow. Now, under the selective control flow, the statement that we learned was if statement. And we also saw that if comes in three different variants. Okay, the plain if else and if elif statement, where elif was the full shorthand version of else if. Okay, now if can also form another variant in which we call by the name nested if, followed by we'll be learning the looping statements or the iteration statements, wherein you will have to repetitively do some actions, then followed on loops in detail. Okay, and then jumping statements, wherein you can transfer the control from a point to another point using the various jump statements available in Python, followed by the different types of else clauses. We had already seen an else clause provision under the if statement in the selective control flow. Now we're going to see where in other places can you use the else clause in Python, and a differentiation of the terms determinable and non-determinable loops. So these are the various contents that we will be seeing in today's session. Okay. So welcoming all of you to today's session. So before starting the session, let me give you a brief recap of the if-elif conditional statement that we had seen in the last class. Okay. Now here is a statement. If-elif, I told you that elif is the shorthanded version of else if. Now, whenever you have to write a condition, the condition is always attached along with the if part and not with the else part. Okay. Now, if we write the condition, okay, the conditional expression is either evaluated to true or to false. Okay. Now, any expression that can be evaluated to true or false is either a relational expression or a logical expression. So usually such type of expressions are in the place of conditional expression. Now followed by the compound statement of the if. Now whenever the statements followed by the if will be evaluated only if the condition evaluates to true, then what if the condition evaluates to false? The control would go to else elif part. Here again, since I have encountered an if, I have a provision of writing a condition here. And will you be taking the whole 12 CS? Yes, Gokul, I will be. So this is just the introduction topic that I am dealing right now. Elif conditional expression. Now here again we have attached another condition. So if this condition evaluates to true, the statements below the elif will be executed, and if this goes to false, the else part, it will come to the else part and the statements below the else will be executed. Okay. Now if elif conditional statement were used in a condition or in a situation in which you had to try out or do multiple condition checking. Okay. So whenever a multiple condition checking had to be done, we took the help of if elif conditional statement. And the thing that we need to note here is every time the condition or the conditional expression will always be attached with the if statement and not the else statement. Now, if the condition is true, the set of action beneath the if statement will be evaluated or executed, and if this goes to false, it has to come to the next part. Clear? Likewise, this would be going. Now, I have just shown here two conditions. You can have multiple conditions here. As many conditions as you have, you will be attaching that many number of if statements. Okay. When all the conditional expressions goes false, what part will be executed? The else part would be executed. Okay. So moving on to today's portion. So today we have the first thing that we're going to see is nested if statements. Now in the previous slide, I gave you a recap of the if statement, and I told you that if was used when we had multiple condition checking. Now here also it is a similar kind. Nested if also we will be checking for multiple conditions, but these additional conditions are checked in such a way that if you have to arrange in a manner a condition inside that, you need to check another condition. Okay, you have a condition and inside that you need to test additional conditions. If such a situation is arised, we will be taking the help of nested if statement. Is the idea clear? So whenever we have to test additional conditions inside a condition, the thing or the construct that will come to our help is nested if. Now nesting means if has another if in its if body, or in the else body, or in its else body. Okay, anywhere it can happen. So to better understand the additional condition testing using nested if statements, let us take an example. We are given with three numbers. Okay, and we are asked to find the minimum and maximum value amongst them. So what is the question? You are given with three numbers. So from the three numbers, you have to calculate the minimum as well as the maximum value amongst them. Now let us see how the program proceeds. Now, if you have to have three numbers, you need to accept the three numbers from the user, right? How do you accept the number from the user? Definitely using the input function. Now, what is the syntax of the input function? Yes, Anand. Good evening. Welcome to the class. So, how do you accept the function using input? Now, whatever you are accepting using the input function is by default taken to be what type? String type that we have seen, right? So here my need is to accept a number. So what I need to do is I need to typecast it, or I need to change the data type from string to integer. How do I do it? I give the int function, and inside the int function I'll be doing the input operation. Is the idea clear? So this is how I'll be writing. So I'm going to enter a number. No, whenever a number has to be inputted, it has to be saved in a variable, right? Only then you can use it every time. So what I do here, using the assignment operator, I assign it to a variable, say x. So x is equal to int of input of enter a number. Now this is your display message, enter a number. It will be coming on your screen as such. So whenever the display message comes, the user will input a number. This number would be of string type. It will be typecasted to integer, and then it will be copied into the variable x. Now how many numbers do we need here? Three numbers, right? X, y and z. So what do you need to do? You need to, using the same format, you need to read the other two numbers also. So now you have a number in x, you have a number in y, and you have a number in z. Now I need two variables for finding and copying the minimum value, and I need another variable for finding and copying the maximum value. Now see what I have done here. This is actually not mandatory statement, but still, to avoid garbage values, I have given an assignment like this. Now what does the statement say? The variable min, the variable max, both are assigned to none. What is none? None is a string literal. Now this literal is given when you have no value to be assigned. Okay. So in the initial state, there is no value assigned to these two variables. So I hope this much part is clear. Now we are going to, the next step is we have to find, we are with three numbers. We have two variables min and max. Now in these variables, are we going to find out and then assign the value, minimum value as well as the maximum value. Okay. Now next comes the conditional statement. Now I need to check Okay, I have three numbers. I need to check which is the smallest or which is the biggest among them. See how I'm going to phrase my condition. Now I'm going to take the first variable and I'm going to guess this. If x is less than both y and z, I can conclude that x is the minimum value, right? So see how I have phrased the conditional statement. Now this is the logical AND operator. So with AND, I have clubbed two relational expressions. See on either side the relational expressions. So the first expression says if x is less than y and if x is less than z. That is the second expression. So if both are true only, the whole statement will evaluate to true, right? Only if x less than y and x less than z evaluates to true, the whole expression would be evaluated to true. Now if this goes true, what will happen? You are permitted inside. Now I'll check. Now I found out that x is a minimum value. Now what I have to do is I have to find the maximum value. Now I am going to check amongst these value. Now I am left with only y and z. Now I need to compare both of them, right? Since I have found out that x is the minimum value among them, I need to check between y and z. Now what I do here is I check if y is less than z. In this case, if this is true, I can conclude that my minimum value is x, that I already concluded, and now I know that my maximum value will be z provided this condition is true, that is y less than z is true. Now here I have used multiple assignment. Now how will the assignment happen? Order wise, the order in which it is appearing. So x will be assigned to the variable min, z will be assigned to the variable max. Now suppose if this condition is false, that means I need to conclude that the maximum value is not z but instead y. Now did you see here? I have an if statement and I have used another if body, that is if else body inside if. This is how nesting happens. Clear? Now we are not done with the program. We need to check there can be a situation in which this condition itself is going false, right? So in that case, I need to proceed. Repeat. Prakash, what part do you need to repeat? Is it starting from the conditional statement you need to repeat? Okay, now what happens is now we are not done with the program. So what if our initial condition goes wrong? We are going to check again with y. So how do I write this? L if, right? Else if. So that means the first condition is wrong. Now I am going to check with y. If y is lesser than both the values x and z. Now when I'm checking this, what happens? If this is true, then the control will go inside. Now inside I have another if else body. Now inside this if else body, I'll be calculating the min and maximum values as how I have calculated in my previous condition. Now what did I do here? Now if this condition evaluates to true, that means we are finalized with the concept of min value. What will be the min value here? Y, definitely y, right? Now we need to fix between x and z and find out which is the maximum value. So inside this condition, you just need to check x and z. Now, if x is less than z, I can say that the maximum value is z. And if this condition goes wrong, I can say that the maximum value is x. So this is how the assignment happens here. Now, what if this condition also goes wrong? So that means your minimum value is neither x nor y, but your minimum value would be z. We are left with no other choice. So I'll go and write in my else part. And here, do I need to check a condition? No. If both the conditions are false, that means x is going to, z is going to be your minimum value, right? So inside the else part, you're going to check only, you need to check between x and y. So here I'll check again an if else body. I'm going to check if x is less than y, I can say that the maximum value is y. If this goes false, I can say the maximum value is x. Now at the end of the program, if you want to print the values of, you need to know the values of min and max. What is the ultimate thing you need to do? just print min and max using the print statement, though I have not included it here. Okay, so this is how you're going to find out the minimum and maximum value amongst three numbers. Now, what is the construct that I have used here? Nested if. Okay, why? How nested if? Because inside an if or inside an elif or inside the else, I have again used if. This is how nesting happens here. Okay. Now, in a previous example, what we saw was it was not using a single input statements that we were reading the variable values x, y, and z. Instead, we were using three different input statements, right? Suppose you want to read all the three variables using a single input function, then the solution is using the split function. See how we are going to use this split function. Now what it does is the split function would take the delimiters. The delimiter can be either comma or a white space or anything, and it will split and then take each of the numbers. Now what happens? The splitting happens, and since the splitting can be done with strings, okay, so input function, when you are reading using input function, what happens? The value that you would be reading is always treated to be what type? String type. Now the splitting can be done based on the delimiters, and see what I have done here. I have done multiple assignment. Okay. So x comma y comma z is equal to, suppose I am giving 1 space 2 space 3. So what will happen? 1, 2, 3 and all are going to be string variables, and 1 would be assigned to x, 2 would be assigned to y, and 3 would be assigned to z. Now, if I have to do any other numerical calculation or mathematical calculation, I need to treat them as numbers and not as string. So what should be done? I need to typecast it. So see how I'm typecasting it. Typecasting it by providing the variable inside your function. Okay. So int of x, it will be typecasted from string to integer and then again saved to x. And if now I'm going to print x, y, z, actually the values that are printed is numerical 1, 2, 3 and not string value. Is the idea clear? So whenever the message enter three numbers comes on your screen and you're going to enter three numbers, here I've used the delimiters as white spaces. Okay, just the space bar. So what will happen? The first value would be split, second value would be split, and third value also would be split. Now each split would be assigned to the variables in the order on the left hand side. Actually, I have just started with the Python, and now we are going with the introduction topic. Okay, I hope I have answered you. We are just in the conditional statements. Next, we'll be seeing looping also today. And from the next class onwards, we'll be starting with each of the data types. So, the next topic that we're going to learn today is iteration or looping. So far we have been seeing the different selective statements. Okay. So selective statement was you had a condition, and based on the condition was evaluated. Now the evaluation was either true or false. Now based on the evaluation, a particular set of action was taken. Now suppose you need to perform a certain activity repetitively for a number of times. This is what we call by the term iteration or looping. Something that has to be repetitively done. We need to see how this repetition or looping or iteration can be done in Python. Okay, there are two kinds of statements which would help you to write loops in Python. The first one is the for loop and the second one is the while loop. Okay. So let us see each one of them. The first one, as I told you, is the for loop. Okay. Whenever we are learning anything, any construct, the first thing that we need to learn is its syntax. Okay. Only if you learn the syntax, you will learn how to use it in your program. And there are certain conventions that you need to understand in the syntax also. Anything that is enclosed between angle brackets, it is a construct, or it is a space where programmer has to write something. Anything which is enclosed between sorry, not angle brackets, it's actually square brackets. Okay. Anything that is enclosed between square brackets, what happens? It is either optional. Okay. So variable in sequence. So the syntax of for loop says the keyword for. So anything that is coming outside the angle brackets or square brackets, you have to use it as such. That means these are the keywords. Okay. So the syntax for loop says for variable in sequence, then followed by the colon symbol, statements to iterate. Okay. So here for and in are the keywords. Now the variable is enclosed between angle brackets, so it has to be written by the programmer. Again, the sequence also has to be written by the programmer. So I have given a small code fragment to understand the for loop. Now see here, I have a variable I which is assigned to 0. So what will be the data type of I? It is a number. It will be treated as a number, integer number. Now I'm going to write for I in. Now what is this? When I'm writing a square bracket, something inside a square bracket. Now this is the sequence. Okay. Now we'll learn what the sequence is later on when we'll be seeing the data types in detail. But we had already seen that what is this? The list is represented within square brackets. Okay. Now the sequence here is a list and the values are written here separated by comma. So you have 5 values here, 1, comma 2, comma 3, comma 4, comma 5. Okay. Now what will happen? So this variable, as each time the variable will be taking the value inside the sequence. So inside the for loop, I have given a print statement. Now what the print statement say? I have to increment the value of I by 7 and then print on the screen. Okay, so I hope the values are clear. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now each value would be incremented by 7 and then printed on your screen. So let us see the output. What happens? In the previous slide, we saw that the first value was 1. So 1 plus 7, you get 8. Followed by 2, 2 plus 7, you get 9. Followed by 10, 11 and 12. So this will be the output of your for loop. Clear? So moving on to the next loop, that is the while loop. Now here the keyword, first we'll be seeing the syntax and followed by an example. So the syntax says while logical expression or the conditional expression, colon followed by the loop body. Now the specialty of this expression is that this expression would be either evaluated to true or it will be evaluated to false. Now, if it is evaluated to true, what happens? The loop body will be executed. Now, as long as the condition is true, the loop body will be executed. And when the condition goes false, you will be exiting out from the while loop. So, this is how the while loop is constructed. Here you have the keyword while. So, the keyword has to be used as such. Clear? So here is an example to understand the code fragment, just a code fragment to understand the while loop, the implementation of while loop. I have given here the initial value of a variable I is set to 0 here. Now I am going to use while loop. So I write while I less than 10. Okay. So the condition says if whenever the value of I is less than 10, do the set of action. Okay. Now, what is the set of action? Now, set of action is a compound statement. So, after colon, I would be indenting, do the indentation. So, it is not falling here. See, you have a space and then you're writing it inside. Now, after the indentation, you have the statement I plus equal to 1. Now, what is I plus equal to 1? This is the shorthand assignment or arithmetic assignment. So this can be expanded to I is equal to I plus 1. So the value of I would be incremented and that particular value has to be printed. Now, is this condition true? Now, the loop has not yet finished. So, after these two statements, again the condition is being checked. If the condition is true, again the control will go inside the loop, and likewise, the body of the loop will be executed that many times as long as this condition is true. Okay. Now, when the condition goes false, what will happen? The control will exit from here and will be in a statement after the loop. Okay, we'll exit from the loop completely. Now let us see what will be the output here. The initial value of I was 0. So the output will be ranging from 1 to 10. Now when the value becomes 10, what happens? Again, it will go check the condition. So 10 is not less than 10. So what will happen? It will not print and the control will exit from the while loop. So this is how while loop would be exited. I hope this is also clear to you. So next we're going to see the break and continue statements here. So break and continue statements are used as jump statements. Okay. So jumping means what? Jumping means hopping from one particular point to another point, right? So whenever a control has to be transferred from one point to say not the next statement but to somewhere else, we need to use something called as jump statements. Okay. Now we know that as of now the timing here will be from 8:30. So yes, I would be completing the syllabus. Though not daily, but I'll be taking at least alternate days. Tomorrow my class would not be there, but we'll have a class on Friday. Okay. So the break statement, coming back to the break statement, I told you that jumping means it is jumping or transferring control from one point to another point, and this another point need not be a point very next to or very succeedingly. Instead, it will be a point some far away. Okay. So whenever we saw sequential control flow, whenever we saw selective control flow or the loop iteration, we knew where this would be going, right? The control, each time we knew the condition was evaluated at some place. Based on the condition, a certain set of actions was taken and we knew the route of how the flow control was flowing. Now let us see, other than this, how can the flow controls be altered? The answer is using the jump statement. So we are going to see the first jump statement, which is the break statement. Okay. Now what happens in the break statement? So first thing that we need to understand is it is usually used with the looping or iteration statement. Okay. Now it will skip the rest of the loop and jumps over to the statement following the loop. So now we understood that break has to be used inside a looping statement. Now the break is a keyword and so it has to be used as such. Now the next thing is what it does. What it does, it will jump over to the statement following the loop. So that means the control will be jumping out completely out of the loop. Now to understand the working of the break statement, we have certain formats here in which the break statement is used in a while loop as well as in the for loop. And now let us go and see the format of while loop. Usage of break inside the while loop. Okay. So according to the syntax, when you are using the while loop, the keyword while has to be written. So while test condition. Now when this condition or the test condition evaluates to true, what will happen? The control will come inside the loop. So statement 1 would be examined or executed. Next, see, we have a conditional statement here. Now the conditional statement is if statement followed by if condition. When this condition or the particular condition attached with the if statement evaluates to true, what is the action to be taken? Break, right? So what will happen here? See, what is the action happening? Whenever the break statement is encountered, the control from this point, it will be taken to a statement outside. Now, what is statement 3? Statement 3 is in alignment with while, so that means it is a statement outside the while loop. So the loop will terminate, the while loop will terminate, and the control will come to statement 3. Now, suppose this condition evaluates to false, break will not be activated. So that means statement 2 will be executed. Again, you need to see the test condition of the while loop. Again, statement 1, you check for the if condition. So only if the condition with the if statement evaluates to true, break is actually executed here. Okay. So it is usually a good programming practice to use break or continue along with the if conditionals. Otherwise, every time it will terminate out of the loop, and none of the cases the entire loop would get executed. Now, as and how the condition or the programmer needs the program to be, we'll be using the break statement. Okay. Now we're going to see how we are going to use the break statement inside the for loop. So definitely if break statement can be used inside the loops, we need to see how this happens both in while loop as well as in for loop. Okay. Now let us see the construct of for loop. Okay. So for, the keyword for, followed by the loop variable, the keyword in, and the sequence in which the for loop is going to appear. Then we have the compound statement. Now here this is the body of the loop from statement 1 to statement 3. Now after statement 1, again I have given a condition using the if statement. So if condition, what I have given is I have given break. Okay. So if condition, I have given break. Now if this condition evaluates to true, that is the condition attached with the if statement evaluates to true here, what will happen? Break will be executed. What does break say? Wherever you are, come out of that. Right? Now where are you? You are inside the for loop. So you need to come out of it. So the loop gets terminated and control goes to statement 4. Now see, where is statement 4? Statement 4 is in line with for loop. So that means it is outside the loop. Only till statement 3 is your loop body. So the loop gets terminated. Here also, the if condition, if it evaluates to false, break will not be activated. Instead, statement 2 and statement 3 will be executed, and then for the next iteration, the loop will continue. Clear? So this is how the break statement will be working inside the while loop or the for loop. Now let us see the next jump statement, which is the continue statement. Okay. Now what does the literal meaning of the word continue say? Continue means go on whatever you are doing. Now we need to check in Python, inside the loop only we are going to use the jump statement. Is the meaning getting satisfied here, or is the continue statement going to behave differently? Okay. Now see, what it does is it will skip the rest of the loop statement and causes the next iteration of the loop to take place. So what will happen? Wherever you are encountering the continue statement, what will it do is it will skip the rest of the loop statement. So all the statement beneath the continue would be skipped or rather ignored, and what will happen? The loop will again continue for the next iteration value of the loop variable. So this is how continue statement is going to behave. So continue means yes, it is going to repeat whatever it is doing. It is continuously going to perform whatever it is doing. But how is it going to do? It will skip the part that is coming beneath the continue statement, and then it will be repeating itself again. Now let us see how the continue statement is working inside the while loop first. Okay. So I have while the test condition. If this test condition evaluates to true, what happens? you need to get inside the loop, or the control will be transferred inside the loop. If the test condition evaluates to false directly, the control will go to statement 3. Clear? Now, what is written? Let us see what is written inside. No. Min and max are not variables in Python. It is user-defined variables here. That is why I assigned the variables to none in the first case. And then as the program was proceeding, I found out the values and then reassigned it. Okay. So let's see the while condition once more. So what happens? Inside the while condition, I have statements from the loop body is from statement 1 to statement 2. Now, in between then, I have used the continue statement. Now, what have I written here? It has been attached along with the if statement. So, if condition, I have written continue. So, what will happen? When this condition evaluates to true, continue will be activated. If the condition is false, the control will never go to the continue statement. Instead, it will be going to the statement 2. But suppose if the if condition evaluates to true, what will happen? Continue will be activated. So the triggering the action of continue statement, what has to be done? It will skip the rest of the loop statement. That means what is the rest of the loop statement? Here we have only statement 2 as your rest of the loop statement. So statement 2 would be ignored here. What will happen? The control from this point, it will go back to the loop. And then for the next iteration value of your loop variable, the loop will continue. Okay. So statements beneath are skipped and the next iteration begins. Suppose this while loop was going for, say, for you have the loop variable I and the loop variable is continuously incrementing, and now for I equal to 1, the loop is getting run. The if condition got true and continue has to happen, then statement 2 will not be executed. The loop variable will be incremented to the next value, that is 2, and then the while loop will be continuing again. So this is how continue statement is going to work inside the while loop. Okay. Now let us see how the same statement, that is the continue statement, is going to work in a for loop. Okay. So according to the syntax, for variable in sequence, we have the loop body, that is the for loop body from statement 1 to statement 3. Okay. So what is going to happen? So variable in sequence. So the sequence can be either a string, it can be a list or a tuple, okay, anything. Now for variable in sequence, if for this iteration is going to start and then the loop body from statement 1 to statement 3. Now how we have used the continue statement here? If condition continue. Okay. Now what will happen? When this condition evaluates to true, continue will be triggered as we have seen in the previous example. Now both the continue will be working similarly in both the loops. Okay. What is the action to be taken? All the statements beneath has to be skipped and the next iteration has to begin. So what will happen? The control from this point, that is from the continue statement, it will be transferred to the for loop again, and for the next value in the sequence, the loop will be executed again. So for the next value in the sequence means the next iteration. So if continue is going to be evaluated, that means statement 2 and statement 3 will be ignored here. Okay. So it is always a good programming practice when you're using continue statement to use it along with an if condition. Or else what will happen? It depends on the situation in which you have to use a statement. Actually, if you're not using the if conditional, what will happen is every time the continue statement will be executed as long as the loop is going to iterate, and for all the cases statement 2 and statement 3 will be ignored here. Okay. So you need to understand your question first and then you have to use whatever be the jump statements according to the situation. I hope this is also clear to you. Okay. So we have seen selection statements. We later saw the looping statements. We saw the syntax and an example for each. Later we saw the jump statements. How many jump statements were there? Break and continue statements. Now, when we learned the jump statements, we saw that it is usually used along with the loop. And how is the control getting transferred when you are using break? Break means wherever you are, just break from the sequence and then come out. Okay, so whichever construct you are inside, break from that construct and come out. So if you are using it inside the loop, what will happen? It will exit out from the loop. Okay, so then we saw continue statement. As the meaning of the word says, continue also means to continue. But how does it continue? You have a condition, and based on the condition, the continue will be evaluated. And then if continue is triggered, how will the action be taken? All the statements beneath the continue are not taken into consideration, or they are totally ignored. And what happens? The control gets transferred to the loop again, and the loop will continue but for the next iteration and not for the present value. Okay, so this was how the jump statements used to perform. Now we are going to see an elaborate version on the loops, and let us see what we are going to learn here. So more on loops. We are going to see the for loop based on range function. Okay, we saw the for loop using the in sequence format. Now there is one more variant of using the for loop. Now let us see the syntax of it. See here the range based for loop here. Example, see this example. For value val is nothing but the variable name. So VAL or value in range of. So whenever you are giving a range, you need to give a starting value and you need to give a stopping value also. Now a range means within this and this. So when I am giving a range, I need a fixed start point and then a fixed stop point, and the range of values that is coming in between the start and stop would be considered here. So see the start and stop value here. 3 is your start value and stop value is 18. Now what is the action to be performed here? Print the value in the variable VAL. That is the action to be taken here. Okay. Now there is no need of VAL to be in brackets here. You needn't use around brackets. You can write print VAL. Now let us see what is going to be happen. I told you that inside the range function, you can give two values, the starting value and the stopping value. Now we need to check whether both are inclusive or only one is inclusive. Okay. So the explanation for range function says the start value is 3. Okay. But the stop value is not 18, but instead one value less than the stop. That is 18 minus 1, which is 17. So what are the values that will be coming inside this range? Starting from 3, you have 3, 4, 5, etc. up to 17 and not 18. Okay. So see how range of 3, 18 is going to be elaborated. It will generate actually a list. List is what? It is a data type. It is containing values which are separated by comma, and the representation is it is having the delimiter as the square bracket. It will be the values or the list of values will be enclosed between square brackets. Okay. So range of 3, 18. It will generate a list with which the for loop works. Now, something that you need to note here is the starting value is taken into consideration, but the stopping value -1 is considered. So, this is how the range variant of the syntax of for loop. This is how you'll be using for loop with range. Okay. Now, we learned range function. We saw the two types of syntaxes for the for loop also. Next, we are going to see What are the variable ways in which you can use the same function range? Now, how did we use in the previous example? In the previous example, inside the range function, you specified a starting value, you specified a stopping value. Okay, but we told that the start is a part of the range. See, start is a part of the range, but not the stop. Instead, stop minus 1, or you need to calculate this, right? This is how we saw. Now we are going to see the different variant uses of range function. What are the different ways in which you can use the range function? Okay. Now let us see the first one. First one says range of stop. Now range is a function. So the value that happens inside the function, you either use the term parameters or the term arguments. Yes, you have a difficulty in following the range function. Tell me. Yes, tell me. What's a doubt? You can post it in the comments. Okay. So let us continue. So we have the range function here. Now inside the range function, I have used the variable stop. So here I have only used one variable. Okay. And that variable is just stop. Now, what have I skipped here? I have skipped the start value. So, whenever inside the range function, if you have a single value, so that means that the start value is skipped here. So, the default start value is always taken as 0. Clear? Whenever only a single value is given here, that means it is a stop value, and the start value is default taken to be 0. Now, how will the range goes, or the values range here from 0 to stop minus 1, because stop is never considered to be inclusive inside the range function. So what happens is the values would range from 0 to stop minus 1. Now each time the value gets incremented by 1. That we saw in the previous example also, right? How did the values go? 3, 4, 5, up till 17. Now, how was the values getting incremented? It was getting incremented by 1. So, similarly, inside the range of stop, what happens? The start value is 0, and this will go on till stop minus 1, each time incrementing the value by 1. Now, let us see the next variant. In the next variant, you have specified both start as well as stop. Now this is the example that we saw in the previous one. Here both start and stop was specified, and we saw the range of values that will be generated inside the list also. Clear? Now see the third variant. The third variant says range of start, stop, step. Now what is mentioned here? Three different values as parameters or arguments are being given here. Okay. You have a start value, you have a stop value, and see a third value. You have a step value. Okay. Now in all the previous above forms of range, we never use a step value. So here the incrementing happened by default 1. Right. Now when you're using the step value, what will happen? If you want to alter the incrementing value, or you need to use the incrementing value other than 1, you need to explicitly specify inside the range as your third argument. Clear? Now, so inside this range, what are the values? You have the start, you have the stop, followed by the step. Okay. So the incrementing happens by step value. Whatever value or whatever number that you are giving in the place of step, it will be taken for Yes, hello, good evening. Welcome to my class. So start, stop, and followed by step. So the incrementing value is step here. But in all the cases, something that you need to note here is it is not actually till stop, but stop minus 1. The list generated would be ranging from your start value till stop minus 1. If the step value is given, the increment happens by step value. If the step value is not given, in both the other cases, the default increment or step value is taken to be 1. If the start value is not specified, the default start value is taken to be 0. So these are the things that you need to keep in mind whenever you are going to use the range function. Clear? So these are the things that we have noted from all the three variants of the range function. The start value is always a part of the range. Okay. But is it the stop value? No, right? We saw it till stop minus 1. Now, if the start value is omitted, so a range is giving you an option in which you can omit the start value. So if the start value is omitted, the default start value is taken to be 0. And if the step value is omitted, the default step value is going to be taken by 1. If you need to alter the step value, you need to explicitly specify it inside the range function as the third argument. So I hope range is also clear to you. Next, let us see the else clause. Now, how did I write here? Loop else clause, right? So that means the else clause is going to be used along with the loop here. Where did we actually see the else clause? Inside the if statement. When we were learning the selection statements or the conditional statement, we saw the else clause. Now, in that we saw that the conditional statement is either a relational or a logical expression or any expression that is going to be evaluated to true or false, right? So, whenever the if conditional was evaluated to true, a set of action was taken. When the expression was evaluated to false, else clause was considered, right? So we had come across this clause, but we saw it along with the selective statements. Now we are going to see an additional usage or the how the else clause can be used. Timing of the session. As of now, I have planned for an hour's class, but till our topics would get over, I'll be taking. It will get over by 9:45, I guess. Okay. So the loop else clause. Okay. Now here you have a provision of writing the else clause inside the loop body. So the Python loops provide an optional else clause. Actually, this is an optional version. If you have to write, you can write, or if you want to omit, you can omit also. Now, there will be situations in the program in which you need to use the else part or to execute the else part inside the loop. In such cases, only you will be writing the else clause. Now, in very simple programs that you will be learning in your classes, maybe the else clause is not much needed, but we need to understand that such a provision is being provided in Python language. Okay, so let's go into it. Python loops provide an optional else clause. I'm stressing it is optional. It entirely depends on the programmer or the user. Only if it is strictly or mandatorily needed in your question, you can use it. Otherwise, you can skip it also. Now we're going to see whether it can be used only with for or whether it can be used with for loop as well as while loop. Okay, let's see the first syntax for in for loop. So we have for variable in sequence colon followed by the for loop. Okay, then so in the indentation in line with the for keyword, we'll be writing the else body followed by statements. So this is how the syntax will look like when you are using the else clause inside the for loop. Now let us see how and when the else clause will be executed. Okay. The else clause gets executed when the loop terminates normally. Now, what is normal termination? That is when the for loop is executing for the last sequence in a value in the sequence. When it is executing in the last value in the sequence means after that the only option is to come out of the loop, because already it is in the last value, the sequence is no more. So it has to come out. So when it is coming out of the loop successfully, or when it is a normal termination, the else body will be executed. Now we need to understand what is an abnormal termination in the case of a loop. Now suppose you have used a jump statement here, usage of break statement. Okay, suppose you have used a break statement inside the for loop. What will happen? Do you think that the loop will go in and complete the entire values inside the sequence? No, right? At some point of time, the break will be executed, and if it is executed, what happens? It will come out of the loop prior to completion of the loop. Okay, so whenever the break gets executed, it is an immediate stop or exit from the loop. So that means the loop is never going into completion. Such a case is called as abnormal termination. So if in your program you have used the else clause along with the for loop, and if you have used the break statement inside the for loop, and if the break statements gets executed based on the condition, what will happen? Your else clause will not be taken into consideration by the interpreter. Clear? So this is how the else clause works. The else clause will only work if the loop terminates normally. Okay? So now we see that the else clause can be used along with the while statement also. Okay? So let us see. While condition statement 1 followed by statements. We were having multiple statements, and then you write else, okay, in line with the the indentation. See, just below the while you'll be writing else and the else body. Okay. Now here also the condition happens. Now when will the else clause get executed? Only when the while loop terminates normally. Now when is a normal termination of while loop happening? That is when the condition of the while loop evaluates to false. So whenever this condition evaluates to false, what will happen? It is a normal termination, and then it will come to the else body and the else will be executed. Suppose you have used a break statement, that means it is an abnormal termination and abnormal exit from your while loop, then the else clause will not be executed. Now suppose if you have not used an else clause, what happened? The while loop gets terminated normally or abnormally, the control will go back to the statement. This is a case in which if you have not used the else clause. But if the loop is terminating by itself, what happens? Sorry. If the loop terminates by itself, normally what happens? The else body will be executed and then the rest of the program will be executed. Okay, I hope this is clear. Sorry, that's a bad throat now. Now we saw nested if statements, right? The next what we are going to see is nested loop. What was nested if? When an if statement was coming inside an if statement or an else statement or an elif statement, we call it as nested if. Now we are going to see the same thing here also. Just a second. Excuse me. Okay. So next is nested loop. So in the case of nested loop, what happens is you have a loop inside another loop. Okay. In nested if, what happened? You had an if and inside another if or another else or another elif statement. Similarly, the same thing can happen inside loop 2, which is coming under the category of nested loops. So loop inside another loop. Now we need to understand something here. Suppose let us take a consideration in which you are having two loops. So there is one loop inside another loop. Okay. So the inner loop must terminate before the outer loop. So you need to write the range of values or the condition in such a way that the inner loop terminates the inner loop terminates before the outer loop. Now here is a code fragment just to make you understand the state of nested loops. I've used two loops here, an I loop as well as a J loop. Now range of 2. Now range of 2 means this is your stop value. Now what is your default start value? 0. So what are the values in this range? 0, comma 1. Okay. Now how about here? Here also I have written range of 2. So what are the default values in this range? 0, comma 1. Okay. So I will be taking the value 0, comma 1. J will be taking the value 0, comma 1. Now, when I takes the first value, that is I is equal to 0, what will happen? It will come inside the loop. Now here j in the range of 2. So when j is in the first value, that is j equal to 0. So now we are seeing a condition in which I is in the first value, that is 0. We are coming to the inner loop, and the inner loop is in its first value of the j loop, that is j is equal to 0. We are asking to print the values of I space j. So how will the values be printed? The values would be printed on the screen separated by a space. So the output comes 0 space 0. Clear? Now what will happen? Is this j loop over? No, right? So what will happen here? It will again come back, and for the next value in the range of j, that is 1. So I is already 0. So what will be printed? 0 and 1 separated by a space. Clear? Now the range of j is over. What will happen? It will exit and go back to your outer loop. So the inner loop has terminated and then goes to the outer loop. Now the outer loop will again continue for the value of 1. Clear? Again it will come in. So for j equal to 0, 1 space 0 would be printed. And again for j equal to 1, what will be printed? 1 comma 1 would be printed. Now j loop gets terminated. It comes back to the I loop, that is the outer loop, in which it is contained. So one loop is contained inside another. The inner loop or the contained loop should be terminating first and then coming to the outer loop. Now what will happen? Here also the range value gets over. So the loop gets terminated. Okay. So this is how you get the output. So usually nested loops are used in situations in which you have to print patterns. Okay. So in those cases, you would be intelligently using nested loop and intelligently using the construct in which the loop would be calculated. Okay. Now let me introduce to you two terms, that is determinable and non-determinable loop. Okay, so these terms are going to be prefixed with loop. So we need to understand the behavior of loop to understand which is determinable and which is non-determinable. So let us see the for loop first. Now see, what is the behavior of for loop? Here, the number of iterations are determined beforehand as the size of the sequence it is operating upon. So usually the for loop has two variants. We have already seen in the syntax, either in the usage of sequence or in the usage of range function. In both the ways, the number of iterations was listed here. Okay. Even if it was a range function, we had a list of values starting from the start value to stop -1 in the sequence, as many number in the sequence, or as long as there is an element inside the sequence, the loop had continued. So we could beforehand assume how many times the repetition or the iteration or the looping is going to happen. So that means the number of iterations can be determined beforehand. Okay. But in the case of while loop, the number of iterations strictly depends upon the result of the condition. So in the syntax of the while loop, we saw that while is always attached with a condition, right? The condition was an expression. The speciality of the expression was it was either evaluated to true or false. If the expression was evaluated to true, we saw that the loop body would be executed And if the condition goes to false, the loop body was not executed, right? So the number of iterations strictly depended on the result of the condition. Only if the result goes true are you permitted to enter inside the loop, right? So here a determination couldn't be happening. So for this reason, what we conclude is the for loop is always a determinable loop because we know how many times the loop is going to run. But in the case of while loop, we do not, because each time the loop is performed, again it goes back to check the condition. Only the condition is true, again the loop is going to be performed. Now when the condition goes false, it is kicked out of the loop, right? So we cannot predict beforehand how many times this loop is going to run. So in this case, while loop is called as non-determinate. I hope these two terminologies are also clear to you. Determinable and non-determinable loop. Now let us see a very small example, and after the example we'll see why we saw this example also. So I have a small code fragment in which I have used a variable avg, and it is assigned the value 10, and then I'm trying to print avg. Now is there any difference in both the variables? Yes, right? What is the difference? Now, when you assign the value 10 to AVG, I saw that A is capital or in the uppercase. And when I'm trying to print the variable value in the variable AVG, how did I use AVG? A is small letters or lowercase. Okay. Now, whenever you're going to use like this inside your program, what happens is the language will never be, Python is never able to distinguish between capital A, VG and AVG. What happens is it will treat each of them differently. Capital AVG is treated differently and AVG is treated differently. So it distinguishes the identifier differently. So what happens? What is the conclusion? That is, it cares about the case. That means whether it is a lowercase or uppercase. Since things are treated differently here, the conclusion that we need to learn is Python is case sensitive. Okay. So if you're going to use a variable of the name capital AVG, that means throughout your program, whenever you have to use or address or access this variable, you have to use it as AVG itself and not changing its case. Doesn't mean you can change the case of the first letter and then not the others. It is nothing like that. Whatever is the format that you are using, it has to be followed throughout your program. Okay. So with this, actually, we are concluding our topic. And so we have seen the different more on loops, and then the jump statements, and then the syntaxes also. So is there any doubts? So before winding up the session, let me remind to you about my code SLYT. This promo code can help you in a fee reduction or discount of 10% in all the subscription fees of the Unacademy subscription. So with this, I am bidding goodbye, good night to all my students. Thank you, Ritik. Okay then, good night. I hope there are no doubts in this session. Min and max variable, I had already discussed that. Um, yes. Okay then, goodbye and thank you.